Hello, and welcome to ThetaTalk, your go-to podcast for the latest insights on financial crime compliance. I'm Nitzan Solomon, Global Head of Product at ThetaRay. And today, we have an exciting episode for you on the transformative power of generative AI in financial crime compliance. Generative AI is redefining what's possible in the fight against financial crime, from improving the detection of sophisticated criminal schemes to streamlining reporting. It offers unprecedented opportunities for innovation. At ThetaRay, we're leveraging Microsoft's OpenAI capabilities to transform how financial crime teams work. From our Gen AI-based risk catalog to detection and, of course, investigation of alerts and cases and reporting, empowering compliance teams to optimize their workflows, to better utilize their resources, and to build trust with regulators. Today, I'm thrilled to be joined by Tyler Pichach, Head of Banking Strategy, Worldwide Financial Services at Microsoft. Microsoft's Azure OpenAI capabilities play a pivotal role in enabling cutting-edge enterprise SaaS solutions, including ThetaRay's. Together, we'll explore how generative AI, built on secure and scalable platforms like Azure OpenAI, can support institutions, whether banks, challenger banks, fintechs, payment service providers, in meeting compliance challenges while driving operational efficiency. Let's dive in. So, Tyler, first of all, thanks a lot for being here. Can you share a bit about your background and your role as Head of Banking Strategy, Worldwide Financial Services at Microsoft?
Nitzan, thanks again for allowing me to join you today. It's a super exciting topic, and I'm thrilled to be here. So at Microsoft, my team is responsible for how we think about financial services, banking, capital markets, and insurance, how our technology can be used to improve both customer experiences, employee experiences, decrease risk, of course, financial crime, anti-money laundering, fraud, cyber is all part of those things. And we're really doubling down on the AI angle across all of those areas. We've seen significant shifts in how our customers and partners are leveraging AI to improve their own capabilities. And Microsoft as a platform company is really excited to be effectively the enabler of how our partners and customers do those things. And so my team helps our customers and partners understand where and how to use those. We work very closely with our engineering teams to develop really cool solutions that can make things really incredible in terms of the experiences we can create. And then we also help from a go-to-market perspective. So we help, for example, ThetaRay or other partners and how they work with their own customers, which are our joint customers, in bringing their solutions to life. So again, really happy to be here. I think we're on still at just the beginning stages of how we're leveraging AI and specifically generative AI across a number of different processes.
Yes, such an exciting time, isn't it? So can you tell me a little bit about how you're enabling innovation through your Azure, specifically through your kind of Azure OpenAI capabilities? Maybe a few examples.
Yeah, absolutely. So again, when we think about what's happening with AI and Azure OpenAI being a big part of that, we look across sort of, we'll call it 4 core areas. And so the first area is around customer experience. And so if you think about where innovation can happen with generative AI, we typically think about things like customer-facing chatbots. And we're now getting into customer-facing agentic experiences or process automation. We also think about employee experience. So there we think about things like, for example, in the contact center, how we can improve things like agent assist, analytics, leveraging summarization, leveraging better knowledge search. On the risk and compliance side, we absolutely are excited to work with ThetaRay around improving investigator times, improving ability to understand and see different types of information and bring those together in new ways. And the last thing, when we think about the core platform side of things, we're really seeing new capabilities around how do we bring products and capabilities to life in a much faster way. And this good example is around the coding experience, things like GitHub Copilot, where they can improve the coding experience or increase it by potentially up to 40 or 50%. So really transforming with AI across a number of different areas. It's super exciting.
And you're kind of seeing the impact across different verticals, different areas. You mentioned kind of coding, you mentioned areas like risk and compliance. So you're really kind of feeling the impact across the board, right?
Yeah, absolutely. There was a survey done, I think it was by McKinsey, that said for financial services firms like banks that are leveraging generative AI, they're seeing a 14 to 24% impact on their bottom line. That's their P&L improvements as a result of leveraging that technology across a number of different areas. Over the next 3 years, from an efficiency perspective, McKinsey was seeing 60 to 80% improvements across the board. So, I mean, these are step changes leveraging AI.
And you're also seeing financial institutions being kind of more open to it and being kind of a little less afraid of the implications as they were previously.
Yeah, I mean, this is one of the key reasons why organizations come to Microsoft. It really is around that idea of security and trust. Look, as an example, when you look directly at OpenAI, wonderful innovations that we've been working together on. When you bring it over to Azure, we call it Azure OpenAI. This is where we really build the safety and security, all of the regulatory controls that go around those large language models. And then we work together to figure out how do we bring those to life in such a highly regulated industry like financial services.
Yeah. So we're seeing the same thing. We're seeing kind of recent trends from really past 6-12 months where really we feel that financial institutions are kind of have gotten to the right level of maturity where they are ready to be thinking about these processes. And definitely Azure's capabilities, security and otherwise are really helping these decision makers get comfortable around these capabilities. Let's talk about some of the key challenges that are actually driving people to go and seek these technologies and how this could help them. And how do you see generative AI actually address these challenges?
Yeah, again, there's different buckets that we take a look at. So as an example, if we think about things in going back to the contact centers, the challenge they have there, to be quite honest, is it's a cost center typically. And I know that, organizations have been trying to make them into a revenue side of things as well, but really it's expensive. And so if we think about challenges of really bringing automation through the ability to do incremental self-service that couldn't exist before because you didn't have the ability to have such natural language conversations, these are huge challenges that are overcome now with generative AI, and specifically the models that are coming out with Azure OpenAI, our partnership together. And we can talk about later on, GPT-o1 and o3 reasoning models as well, which are just, again, step changes in the models themselves. If we think about other areas outside of contact centers, so think about risk and lending, lots of manual processes. Think about know your customer and onboarding. These things can take depending on if it's a corporate customer or business, even a retail customer, can take days, sometimes even weeks. And so being able to leverage AI, both called predictive AI, which is sort of the traditional machine learning, as well as generative AI together, can shorten those timelines in a significant way to days, even hours. So we're seeing organizations really jump on these to leverage the technology to improve those experiences, which is sort of a win-win for everyone. And then, of course, in the financial crime space, I'm sure we'll talk lots about this as well. There are just incredible ways that we can start leveraging technology, specifically generative AI, to first look at data, to find commonalities across different data sets that previously really weren't possible because they couldn't be explained, which is a huge challenge. Now it can. And it couldn't be brought together to really find, common threads. And so think about anti-money laundering and be able to get in front of that. That's a huge step change. When we think about fraud and be able to look at different data sets, again, a huge step change. And so in the financial crime and compliance space, those are huge impacts that we're starting to see many customers around the world move forward with.
Amazing. And I can say from our perspective, and of course from us working together, that's kind of exactly the areas where that's relevant in the financial crime space. So you talked about how kind of people want to move away from manual processes. So that's one of the most painful areas for financial crime. You talked about KYC. So at ThetaRay, for example, where we're seeing our customers getting super excited is with our what we call cognitive AI capabilities, which embed generative AI and predictive AI. And kind of these two working together, they really do bring out the type of value our customers want to see, which is really kind of transformational. So from our perspective, the sort of things we're seeing, first of all, you have, we talked about this. I think a lot of people are doing it today, the whole virtual assistant experience, right? So that is your kind of reactive agent. That is you as a user interacting with ThetaRay's platform so that you can ask questions, kind of open language, help me understand this, summarize that. and kind of get a lot more value quicker. So rather than doing a very long investigation, start drilling in through data sets, and you kind of have this virtual assistant or co-pilot that does that for you, of course, powered by Microsoft. And we're also seeing kind of the next generation of this and capabilities within the generative AI space and you touched on this as well. Tyler, is around the kind of agentic systems whereby, and this kind of people get confused a little bit between the definitions, but they are not just conversational or shall we call them reactive parties to the investigation, but that's where really you kind of have this agent, you give it a purpose, you give it a goal, and it reasons. It's we call it as part of our cognitive AI. It gets to that goal without having a very clear, specific instructions on how they get there. So it's semi-automated. Of course, we always keep human in the loop. It's very important in our type of industry. But the level of results we're seeing there is incredible. You mentioned the KYC space. That's one of the most painful areas when it comes to operational cost in the whole kind of financial crime space. And the type of value, the type of results, the type of cost save you're seeing in this space when you kind of integrate these kind of technologies, it's amazing. Our customers are kind of, it always breaches what people think it can achieve because, the outcomes are completely amazing. And to your point, I think that one of the key things that these technologies bring, and I would be keen to hear what you think about this, Tyler, but is around kind of the ability to bring in context. So in the financial crime space, one of our biggest issues has always been that, things are being looked at very much of a siloed way. So, you'd have a system X producing an alert because of parameters Y and Z, because something looks a little bit suspicious. Whereas if you put it in context, if you're able to look at a lot of different data sets, you can see that, wait a minute, actually, I can tell you this is not suspicious activity because I also know that this and this and this. So you can kind of compile a big picture. And this is one of the things that it's kind of made possible now, and systems like ours do today, that really saves people a lot of time. First of all, by not detecting to begin with behaviors that are really kind of not truly suspicious, but also helping them through the investigation process to kind of take these out and understand that really these are not concerns that they should care about, or vice versa, to highlight, actually, this is something that we think is really critical for you. Is that like this kind of context piece, is that something that you're also seeing quite a bit now?
Yeah, and some of this is fairly new, especially when we start getting into the reasoning models. So we, in January, as an example, released with OpenAI GPT-o3 Mini, and I think it was November before that we did GPT-o1. And so both of those, again, are reasoning models. So if you take a step back, what that means, right? So it takes a little bit longer before the response comes in. So for example, it could take potentially 30 seconds or more for that response, but becomes a lot, better and more effective and potentially longer in terms of the detail it provides, because it does look at context, like you mentioned. And so, one of the really interesting use cases that comes out of that, and you kind of mentioned this, where customers are doing typical transaction monitoring with fantastic predictive AI or, rules-based or however it works, and then running the output of that through a reasoning model, typically O3 Mini first. Why O3 Mini? Because it's great and it's also less expensive. And so let's say that there are 1,000 alerts that come out of the transaction monitoring system that are, high potential, high risk. Run that through O3 Mini, get results out of that, then run, the 300 that are net out of the 1,000, run that through an O1 model, which is a little more expensive, but a little better in the results. And that refines to really understanding a broad stroke of what the potential risks actually are. And then the real high risk ones get put in front of a manual person for manual review. And then, of course, assisted, as an example, like ThetaRay has, so that agent that helps with the analyst's investigation as it goes forward. So it's about not just bringing predictive AI with generative AI together, but potentially multiple Azure OpenAI models to really refine the approach. And we're going to see more and more of that as we go forward. So that's the first piece we're seeing. And then the second piece, which you talked about agentic a little bit, which is around, okay, so now if we have a multi-model approach to getting to an understanding of risk, including human in the loop, how do we then take that to the steps further, which is, what does that kick off in terms of potential workflow? And some of those workflows may be done not necessarily by humans up front, but by specifically trained agents, or we call agentic agents, which is AI using these models. And so, for example, there could be a document management agent, which looks at multiple different types of structured and unstructured data from multiple different documents, in-house and external documents, legal documents, and so forth, to opine on a result. And then moving that over to potentially a compliance agent that can say, okay, well, how does that impact with the bank's AML regulatory internal policies? How does that impact certain regional jurisdictional policies? And what would the output of that be? And then potentially you've got a checker agent that is just skilled on fact checking the other two agents. We've actually seen these AI agents that we'll call it maker checker that actually have arguments in a way where they kind of go back and forth because one is debating the other. And it's really fascinating what's happening. And then ultimately that gets to your point earlier, which is what's the human in the loop and how do they ultimately make that decision?
Yeah, absolutely. So this is, and this is an interesting bit because I think a lot of people are not aware that, when you build these kind of agentic systems, it is really let's call it collaboration, right? Between different agents doing different things, and together they kind of get you to the outcome that you need. And some of these agents are there to do this sort of validation or kind of ensuring that orchestration and making sure that as a group, let's call it, that the process end to end works as expected. And that's really exciting. What do you tell customers of yours that are still having concerns around data privacy, around security, around hallucinations? How do you deal with these sort of concerns?
Well, first, let's talk about the data privacy piece. I mean, this is really why we double down from, why Microsoft and why Microsoft can help. So we have teams of people and capabilities that, ensure that, for example, the models are not trained on your own data. We ensure that that when the models do work within your own area of your data, they stay contained within that. And we can demonstrate that to our customers. So I think the data privacy piece is really more of an education piece. We don't have gaps. We've solved, what was previously concerns in past. And we continue to do more and more with customers, all the way from, the most highly regulated areas within financial services, including governments as well, all around the world. And we also work with regulators around the world to help educate them. Microsoft takes a very heavy stance in trying to educate and influence regulators on the impact of AI. And so that it's a positive outcome for everyone. When it comes to hallucinations, look, the models are getting much, much better than they were previously. So the number of hallucinations has gone down considerably. We still wouldn't recommend that an end-to-end process, for example, in money laundering is completely automated, or in adjudication, for example, is completely automated. We're not there yet. So we treat those types of things, in a case-by-case basis, but that's also a big reason why human comes in. The last thing we talk about is, especially within financial crime, is that, the organized crime that's creating the concerns, the ones that are the money launderers that are out there, they aren't worried about any of this. And so they're using this technology as well, but they're using it for their own purposes. They're getting faster, they're getting smarter, and they're very organized and very capable. And so if financial service firms are not leveraging the same technology, then to be quite honest, they're going to fall behind. And so, there is a huge need for financial services firms to truly understand and do their best to keep up. And I think that's where partnerships like Microsoft and ThetaRay really come together, because we can help financial firms do that without them having to invest to really clearly build things on their own, because they just won't be able to keep up. And that's really the magic, I think, that we bring together. But let's be really clear. Any bad actors around the world are organized, and they're using these capabilities, and they're getting really good at it. And so our ability to stop them has to be able to get in front and leverage that technology for good, or you're going to create bigger risks in the system.
Yeah. And also, another point that, we've kind of been feeling strongly about is around humans having an error rate too, right? So I think what we've seen in a lot of our implementations is we always do this benchmarking. We always do this comparison, right? So it's never going to be 100% perfect, but what do we gain? So if we compare what we've done and we compare it versus kind of the manual process previously, what are we seeing as the error rate? So what are we seeing? Because humans make mistakes too, right? We know that humans aren't perfect. Most of us aren't perfect. Tyler, maybe you are, I don't know, but most of us aren't perfect. So and what we've seen is really that there is still a level of error, right? Like no machine is perfect, but what we have seen is that the error rate coming out of the um, of our agentic systems and from our solutions, even our predictive AI, they are still significantly lower than what we see from the more what we call traditional approaches, whether it's manual review or rule-based systems or, everything that is, feels safe, but actually even from a error rate standpoint is much, much, much worse than with our new with the new solutions that we have today. And actually, another thing that interests me from your standpoint. So, if we look ahead, where do you see generative AI making the biggest impact? If you're looking 2, 3, 5 years ahead.
So, I think it comes together with what you just talked about, which is that error rate, right? So, certainly there's an efficiency play around AI, but in certain areas like financial crime, there'll be efficiency plays, but there'll also be how do we just get in front of more? How do we stop more crime from happening? How do we stop fraud from happening? How to prevent money laundering? And that is an effectiveness play. And so again, it comes to this idea of how can we use the AI and the generative AI with humans in the loop to be able to make things better. And so, what we'd love to see, and we think we're going to see over the next few years, especially in the financial crime space, is more and more of that coming together. If organizations around the world are really using the AI effectively, and that includes also sharing of certain data elements, leveraging things like confidential compute, where the data stays encrypted and we remove the risk of, sharing raw data in advance. So coming together effectively as a community and leveraging the technology together will be a way for organizations, financial firms to be able to get in front and stop the majority of fraud and the majority of money laundering that happens. I think this is a really, really important goal that we certainly at Microsoft want to double down on. We're going to be, really pushing forward with that over the next few years. Our approach to doing that is really going to be working with partners. So one thing that Microsoft has said is we are a platform company. We don't want to compete with our customers, but we really want to make our partners and our customers as strong or stronger than they've ever been before in their effectiveness to stop financial crime. So I think what you're going to see in the next few years is us really doubling down on, working with partners like ThetaRay to improve those capabilities and, do great things for customers. Look, whether it's many different analysts or other organizations that are talking about, general AI, I think we're still a really far away place for true automation. But certainly the growth of agentic AI and helping streamline processes and helping, do things like better KYC, faster KYC is going to be a really important flow. We're really seeing that. And from an AI perspective, we're calling it our wave 3. And we think that's going to take off over the next 24 to 48 months. And we're going to see people also start to not just use that for, good in terms of financial crime, but also from a monetization perspective. And we think that there's going to be new business models that are going to start as a result of how to think through things in a new way.
Very interesting. I think when it comes to our kind of domain, when it comes to the financial crime compliance space, I think that it truly is going to be transformative, kind of end to end, in terms of how teams organize themselves, in terms of how they build their procedures, in terms of how they think about risk. It really is a transformative change. And I think we're kind of reaching the level of adoption readiness in organizations that previously we didn't think are there. I think people are getting a lot more comfortable around these technologies because they kind of understand, they better understand now the risks. You talked about education previously. I think you guys are doing a good job, as an industry. I think we're doing a good job in terms of educating people so that, the concerns people have around using these tools are at the right places, and they understand how to use it. They understand how not to use it. To your point earlier, and how we do things, kind of making sure that you do have the human in the loop element, making sure that you know the limitations of the technologies, but you also understand the benefits, and you also know what not to be concerned with. So I think kind of the industry as a whole is kind of making big strides towards that. I think what we're seeing, for example, And one of the ways we are kind of realizing value for our customers is around a level of tailoring and personalization that wasn't available before. It wasn't there before, and I think now is becoming a lot more available. And organizations are really excited about. Just kind of as a small example, we have a risk catalog solution. It's obviously Gen AI based. It's a way for us to produce the very comprehensive set of risks for financial institutions to look at that are very, very specific to them. So if you're a French bank and you operate in these 3 countries and you care about these sort of things and you have weaknesses in these particular areas and you care about these regulations, not only do we produce kind of an accurate view of what kind of risks you should care about and kind of immediately generate a model for you to be able to detect these risks from day one, but also when you use things like generative AI, you can have it dynamically updated all the time, so that when tomorrow something happens and there is a fine, there is an enforcement action, there's a new US government with some interesting ideas, you can react to it right away. And I think this is kind of a small example of how I think financial crime compliance is going to continue evolving. It's in this direction whereby these technologies, they don't just make things more accurate. They don't just kind of reduce effort, but they're also kind of really making it tailored without having to do lots of configuration and like how things were done previously. It's really just at any given point in time, you get what you need. And I think this is super important for our industry to, as you say, keep up with the criminals who are absolutely using these tools. So, well, I think we're kind of reaching time. Before we leave, Tyler, any final thoughts you want to leave us with?
Yeah, it's interesting. I love the example you just provided, and to me, that is a great example of low hanging fruit. There's not a huge risk of financial firms doing the way you just talked about, and because ThetaRay has packaged that now and can provide that as a service, it's a really much easier place even to start. And the risk of not doing those things, I think, is significant. I think that, we've seen organizations, banks around the world that have some pretty significant fines. We continue to see things that are happening from a money laundering perspective. It's not getting any easier. And yet, it's interesting that there are still many organizations that we speak to where their financial crime departments, their risk departments, all the way up to, their chief risk officer, they aren't having those conversations. They're still early days. And so I think, it's on us collectively, ThetaRay and Microsoft, but as a community, much broader than that, to make sure we are having those conversations and we are learning together, but really key that there are solutions that are market ready that can support now. And I think, the more we work together with our customers and let them become aware of these things, the faster we can move forward and the faster we can prevent financial crime and money laundering from happening.
Yeah, I love that. And I love that you mentioned the community. I think you're absolutely right on that. Thanks a lot, Tyler, for joining us today. It was really interesting and exciting for me. I hope it was really interesting and excited for our dear listeners. Actually, to our listeners, thank you so much for joining us and tuning in. I really hope you enjoyed it. And if you enjoyed it, make sure to follow the podcast so you'll be notified when our next episode drops. For more content on trends and AML compliance, don't forget to subscribe to ThetaRay's newsletter, Risk Pulse, on LinkedIn. Until next time, stay compliant and stay ahead.